All right, today we're going to talk about turning that big dream, building your own home, into a solid, real plan. And you know what? It all kicks off with the single most important decision you'll make, picking the right piece of land. So let's dig in. So imagine this. You're scrolling through listings, maybe you're just driving around town, and then you see it, the perfect spot. It's got the view, the price feels right. It feels like the one. That's an incredible moment, right? But hang on a second. Before you get too carried away and sign on the dotted line, we need to talk about what you can't see. Because believe it or not, the most important part of your future home isn't that amazing view, it's the actual ground it's going to be standing on. Now, to make this whole thing super easy to follow, we've broken it down into 4 key parts. We're going to start from the ground up, literally, then we'll jump into the practical stuff, cover all the rules and red flags, and finally, we'll talk about what actually makes a house feel like a home. Okay, first up, from the ground up. Seriously, before you even think about floor plans or what color to paint the kitchen, you have to understand the earth beneath your feet. Everything else we talk about today completely depends on getting this part right. So the absolute first thing you got to get your head around is something called soil load-bearing capacity. I know, it sounds super technical, but it's really just asking a very simple question. Can the ground actually hold up your house without sinking? And this slide right here shows you exactly what happens if that answer is no. If the soil is weak, like soft clay or mud, the massive weight of your house is going to cause it to sink, to shift, and eventually to develop these awful cracks over time. It is a total nightmare scenario. On the flip side, this is what we're all aiming for. Strong, stable soil gives you that solid base you absolutely need. A house that's built on strong ground, that's a safe, secure home that's going to last for generations. But, strong soil isn't just one thing. You might have what's called cohesive soil, like clay. It's kind of sticky and it's great at holding its shape, but it can shrink and crack when it gets really dry. Or you could have non-cohesive soil, like sand, which is great for drainage, but it can also shift around. The point isn't to find some perfect soil. It's to understand exactly what you're working with. And that is why the foundation is so incredibly important. A good engineer is going to match the type of foundation to the type of soil. So soft soil might need really deep pilings driven way down, while hard, rocky ground could work with a much shallower base. If you get this match wrong, you're not just risking cracks, you could be risking a total collapse. Now, beyond what the soil is made of, we also have to look at the topography. And that's just a fancy word for the shape of the land. Is it flat as a pancake, or are you looking at a property on a steep, dramatic hill? And that shape, well, it has huge implications. Let's be real. Building on flat land is almost always going to be easier and cheaper. A sloped lot might give you an incredible view, sure, but it's going to require way more digging, specialized foundations, maybe even retaining walls, all of which add a ton of cost and complexity to the project. Okay, so we've covered the ground. Now for section 2. Logistics and the ledger. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty, the practical realities of building. We're talking money, access, and all the services that can honestly make or break your entire project. This slide basically lays out the big 4 questions you have to ask. First, accessibility. Can a giant cement truck even get to the site? Then cost. Does the price of the land leave you enough money in your budget to actually build the house? Utilities. How far away are water and electricity, and what's it going to cost to get them hooked up? And finally, size. Is the plot actually big enough for the house you want, plus a yard and maybe a garage down the road? You have to be brutally honest when you answer these. Moving on to section 3, rules and red flags. I want you to think of this part like you're a detective. You're doing some serious investigation work here, looking for all the invisible things that could cause massive headaches later on. First on your list, zoning. Every single town has a rule book for what can be built where. You have to be 100% sure the land is zoned for residential use. You can't just assume you can build a house on a lot that's zoned for, say, commercial shops. This isn't a suggestion, it's a non-negotiable legal check. And then there's the site's history. Was this beautiful green field once a town dump? Was it part of a floodplain before the river was rerouted? A property's past can hide some really serious safety and environmental issues, so you've got to dig into the records and find out what secrets that land might be keeping. All right, we've covered the ground beneath our feet, the budget, and the law. Now for our final section, number 4, the view from home. This is where we tie all those technical details back to what really matters, your actual day-to-day life in that house.
This is all about the quality of life, right? So is the location convenient? How close is it to schools or your job? What's the prospect? What's the view actually like from where your windows will be? Then there's the aspect, which direction does the house face? That's going to determine how much sun you get and where the prevailing wind comes from. And of course, the local climate is going to affect everything from your heating bill to the kinds of materials you should probably build with.
So let's wrap this all up and put it all together. We've gone from the geology under the ground all the way to the legal fine print. I know, it's a lot to take in. So let's create a really clear blueprint for you to take away from all this. And that brings us to the most important question, doesn't it? With all these different factors, from soil types to zoning laws, how in the world are you supposed to remember all of it when you're standing on a piece of land trying to make a huge, life-changing decision?
Well, here is a fantastic little tool to help you. It's a mnemonic, a memory aid. It looks a little crazy, I know, but it covers every single thing we just talked about. Let's walk through it real quick. First, the ground stuff. S for soil, C for cohesive soils, F for foundation. Then the practicals. A for access, C for cost, T for topography. Next, the red flags. H for history, U for utilities, Z for zoning. And finally, the quality of life stuff. P for prospect, A for aspect, L for location, S for size, and C for climate. It's a really powerful mental checklist you can run through for any site you're considering.
And look, if that whole long thing is just too much to remember, at least burn these 5 things into your brain. At a bare minimum, you have to investigate the ground strength, the total cost, the location, the local weather, and the access to essential services. If you get those 5 pillars right, you are well on your way to building a safe, solid, and wonderful home. Because after all the soil tests are done, after the budgets are checked and the permits are approved, there's one final question that only you can answer. And that is, what's the one thing that truly makes a site feel like it's already home? Thanks for joining us today.